Welcome to round 2 of the Radical SR1 challenge from Rockingham Motor Speedway. Now, for most of these drivers, it's going to be their first time racing here. So let's hear some of their impressions of the track.
I really like this track. I don't know, the rhythm works for me. I had a couple of days here with my coach and it kind of paid off. It felt good. I went fast and yeah, I'm really happy with the result.
My legs were going to jelly halfway round. Had a couple of spins on the brakes. Don't know where I'm going to find much more time than that, to be honest. Yeah, lots to take in.
Finished up P3, which I'm really happy with. Didn't know I was actually racing until 9 this morning. So yeah, a quick learning curve. The track's incredible. The banking's absolutely terrifying. Just trying to stay away from the wall. But it's really good fun. Yeah, it's a good track. So yeah, happy.
I was pleased because I got P6, which is midfield, and I improved on my lap times from testing by a few seconds. So far I'm pleased with how it's going.
Let's look through the grid for the first race of the weekend then. It's Jerome de Sadlier that sits on pole position, and alongside is David or Sven Thompson. Row 2 of the grid is James Pinkerton and Andrew Ritchie, with Mark Crader lining up alongside David Tagg on row 3. Row 4 is Nigel Payne and Chris Hall, who's driving the new Radical SR1, and Peter Devlin lines up alongside Craig Thompson on row number 5. The cars are on the grid, and it is the red lights that will be coming on now. Jerome de Sadlier sitting there on pole position, and he gets away slowly by the look of it, the pole sitter. Not quite as slow as the likes of Nigel Payne and David Tagg and Peter Devlin and Craig Thompson in the background, who when the lights went out didn't go anywhere. So Jerome de Sadlier down into second place as they turn their way through turn 1 for the first time and start to head into the braking area for the Dean hairpin. And already Jerome de Sadlier looking to try and retake up the lead of the race that he lost when the lights went out. They turn their way through the right hand hairpin. It's Andrew Ritchie that leads. Jerome de Sadlier looking to try and pull a move if he can, but can't quite work his way through on the exit of Dean Corner, so he'll sit behind as they head round through Yentwood now. They flick their way up from there, very slightly uphill, and out towards the far reaches of the circuit at Piff Paff. So Jerome de Sadlier at the moment having to give second best to the number 51 car in the hands of Andrew Ritchie. Andrew Ritchie, who we saw finish in the first of the races at Brands Hatch, just outside of the top 6. He's leading here, but Jerome de Sadlier's got the inside line down the Steel Straight. They go side by side through Graceland's Corner, but it is the Swiss driver that just gets his nose ahead, and that's delayed Andrew Ritchie a little bit and now puts him under pressure from Sven Thompson. The number 10 car looking to try and dive its way up the inside, yet through goes David or Sven Thompson, who runs the Nielsen Racing team. So up to second for Sven, down to third, having led the race in the early stages, is Andrew Ritchie, and now coming under pressure is he still from James Pinkerton's car. James Pinkerton's car, the white car, but with the lighter blue and the darker blue lens covers to the front lights on it. Through the Brook chicane for the first time. From there it's back up onto the bank circuit at turn 4. Jerome de Sadlier already looking to try and pull away. He won the last race that we had at Brands Hatch. In third place, coming under huge pressure, is Andrew Ritchie. James Pinkerton sniffing around, looking to try and pick the pocket, move himself up into the podium places nice and early on in this race. But for the moment, it looks as though Andrew Ritchie has just about got the upper hand over James Pinkerton as they again head on to the brakes, turn the car in towards the Dean hairpin and start to accelerate away again up through the gears. 1340cc Suzuki engines working hard as they then head onto the brakes and turn their way through the right-hander at Yentwood. Great fight going on for third and fourth place, but it's still the white car with its red flashes of Andrew Ritchie, the white car with the lighter and the darker blue flashes of James Pinkerton, that sits behind in fourth place. So through Piff Paff, then after they've gone through the sweeping left-hander, it's a very short straight, the Steel Straight, before they're then into the left-hander at Graceland's Corner. Drops away on the apex of the corner, so you need to be careful so as not to run wide coming out of the corner. And certainly the front two are getting away now from this pair for third and fourth position. Andrew Ritchie is late on the brakes as he dare be, down through the gears, still with the number 56 car of James Pinkerton firmly in his wheel tracks. And as they then accelerate their way onto the School Straight, James Pinkerton, he finished fourth last time out at Brands Hatch. He had a fifth in the first race, a fourth in the second race. He hasn't had a podium as yet and will be dearly liking to try and work his way through and grab the opportunity if he can. But for the moment, Andrew Ritchie, sensible driving, just positioning the car where he needs this time. James Pinkerton takes a slightly tighter line coming out of the Brook chicane up towards turn 4. Almost looked as though he was going to overlap, but that wasn't to be. Here's another good fight going on. This is David Franklin, who made progress from the tail end of the field, fighting away with Nigel Payne, and not that far behind is David Tagg as well. The LB drivers are all fighting away for what I think is the lead of the Fangio Cup at this stage, as By the look of things, David Tagg looking to squeeze his way up the inside of Nigel Payne. Couldn't quite manage to pick the pocket of David Frankland as well. So it is the number 91 car that just lies ahead of that little group, David Frankland. Then behind him now is number 95, David Tagg, with the light green car. That's the easy one to spot in the hands of Nigel Payne. So the 3 as 1 up towards Chapman Curve, turn their way through the right-hander, and then from there they disappear out towards the far reaches of the circuit up at Piff Path. But for David Frankland, he's still hanging on to the position at the moment, despite the very best attempts of David Tagg to try and get himself right into contention. Great squabble going on amongst the Fangio Cup competitors. This is going to be for something like 5th, 6th and 7th overall at this stage. Either way, they're having a great little battle, and at the moment it's still being headed by David Frankland, who'd started 11th on the grid, got a much better start. Others struggled to get the car off the line, but now David Frankland's under pressure from David Tagg, who's drawn himself alongside coming out of Tarzan. David Frankland has the inside line still as they come down the School Straight for the next of the corners, which is the left-hander at the Brook Chicane. So it is still just David Frankland that hangs on to it from David Tagg. Then the green car of Nigel Payne. As over the start-finish line, we still get this great fight going on for what is 3rd and 4th position. It's still Andrew Ritchie doing great things to try and keep at bay James Pinkerton. James is still more than within touching distance. Any slip up at all from Andrew Ritchie will see James Pinkerton steal the place. But there's been no chink in the armour as yet for Andrew Ritchie. Again, nice and neat and tidy. Work their way out of the Dean Chicane, or the Dean Hairpin rather, then through what is Yentwood, climb the hill up towards Chapman Curve, whilst this great fight still going on amongst the Fangio Cup competitors. David Frankland cannot shake away the number 95 car of David Tagg. Then the Mountain Dew liveried car of Nigel Payne's not that far away. 3 still as 1, and the next of the cars beginning to close in as well. So through what is Chapman Curve, then from there it's up towards Piff Path, where they thread their way through the never-ending left-hander. This is where the front runners are, already exiting Piff Path and round through Gracelands and in towards the braking area for the Tarzan Hairpin. All of the time, James Pinkerton trying different things at the wheel of car number 56, trying to get the overlap on the car of Andrew Ritchie, and he's almost got the overlap this time down the School Straight. He's got the inside line. The door can't be closed by Andrew Ritchie, so James Pinkerton does eventually go through and take up 3rd position, down to 4th for Andrew Ritchie. Led on the first lap, but he's now out of the podium places. And the car that sits behind him, by the look of things, looks as though it's Mark Crader that's begun to close in as a result of all of that squabbling going on. So there's 3rd, there is 4th, Andrew Ritchie. Not that far behind is the 5th place car, which looked as though it was Mark Crader, as they turn their way through turn 1. And all of this is very much playing into the hands of the leading pair, Jerome de Sadlier and David Thompson, who's got daylight between themselves. And this little battle that's still going on, Andrew Ritchie thought for a moment there he might have the opportunity to instantly retake the place back on the brakes, but wasn't quite to be. So he still follows the new 3rd place car, James Pinkerton, through Yentwood, before they then climb up the very subtle incline up towards Chapman. Elsewhere down through the order amongst the Fangio Cup competitors, number 91 David Frankland has now lost a couple of places, and he's falling under pressure from Craig Thompson, who is a younger brother of David or Sven Thompson, who's currently running 2nd in the race. So David Frankland, who was leading the Fangio Cup, has dropped down through the order. As we look down towards David Frankland, who's still got his hands reasonably full at this stage. They're fighting away for places outside of the top half dozen. So David Frankland, long-time radical racer, still managing to keep at bay the white car with its subtle yellow and silver flash to the front. Onto the brakes comes David Frankland, up towards Tarzan, turns his way in towards the right-hand hairpin with Craig Thompson closing in all of the time. There's one car that's had a spin there on the exit of the corner, and that looks as though it might be David Tagg that's had the spin. He's getting recovered, he's going in the right direction, the engine is still fired up and he works his way along the School Straight, but I think that was David Tagg who was knocking on the door, if not already leading the Fangio Cup, and he's now dropped himself right the way down through the order and has left himself a big old chunk of work to do. Over the start-finish line comes David Frankland, still under pressure from Craig Thompson. He's had a busy race so far, as David. Craig making his debut in the Radical SR1 Cup, can't quite manage to squeeze his way through at turn 1, so opts just to sit back behind once more. And as he then sits in the slipstream, what might he be able to do on the brakes heading up towards the Dean Hairpin? The answer is not a great deal. No, just maintains the gap between the pair of them as they turn their way through the right-hander. Just up the road from this little pair is the light green and black car of Nigel Payne, who is currently hoping that he might be able to hang on to a top 5 place, as the squabble between David Franklin and Craig Thompson still continues as they head through Chapman once more, right out onto the far reaches of the circuit at Piff Paff. Great little fight going on. Whilst out the front, of course, we've still got Jerome de Sadlier looking to build the advantage, and a reasonable advantage he's built up so far. Down the Skull Straight through Graceland's corner, despite the fact that Craig Thompson has continually over the course of the last few laps been rather close to David Franklin. He's not as yet had any opportunity to try and pull a move as yet. David Franklin driving well, Craig Thompson sitting with him. And this might be an opportunity here if he can get the power on coming out of Tarzan corner. Almost has drawn himself alongside, but even if he does, he's on the wrong side of the circuit unless he switches back and tries to outbrake the car ahead. No, so opts to sit behind. So the two 1340 Suzuki powered cars turn their way through the Brook chicane, and then from there they'll be straight onto the power. Craig Thompson takes a slightly tighter line coming out of the Brook chicane and up towards turn 4, which now has drawn him alongside David Franklin, and he should have the inside line as they head in towards turn 1. Yep, so through goes Craig Thompson, place gained over David Franklin, and now David will look to try and return the favour if he can. So safely through turn 1, brake lights come on. At least they do on Craig Thompson's car as he then turns the car and spins, heading in towards the Dean hairpin. He'd done all of the hard work, and unfortunately the tail end of the car just crying enough, and that has caused David Franklin to be delayed slightly, which has dropped David Franklin back into the clutches of the recovering car of David Tagg, number 95. We saw a spin for David coming out of the Tarzan hairpin a few laps ago. Well, he's worked tirelessly hard again and is now looking to try and promote himself up into what would be, if he could get past David Franklin, it would be second in the Fangio Cup, because the Fangio Cup for the older drivers is currently being led by number 71 Nigel Payne, and this is now the squabble for second and third in the Fangio Cup, albeit what I think at this stage is going to be 6th and 7th overall. Safely out of Graceland's corner, they head down towards Tarzan. David Tagg's having a quick look up at the inside of David Franklin. David Franklin sees him coming, takes a wide sweep around the right-hander, but that's it, job done. As far as David Tagg is concerned, he's gained the place and is back up to now what will be a place inside the top 6, but more importantly, leading the Fangio Cup, which is a sort of a championship within a championship for some of the older drivers that we've got out in the SR1s this year. That is a spin, and that looks like that might be Mark Crader's car possibly. Can't quite tell from the angle that we're looking at. So here comes our race leader over the start-finish line with safety car coming out. So all of the advantage that was been built up by Jerome de Sadlier is all going to evaporate, and not a great deal following what is, Mark Crader's car. It's just not come through at the end of that lap. So his car being towed out of harm's way. So should be a brief safety car period. The lights are already out now on the safety car. We're about to go back to green flag racing. So Jerome de Sadlier will decide when he wants to get back on with it once more. The safety car will turn its way into the top of the pit lane just before they head up towards turn 4, and we'll be able to get the race back underway once more. Jerome de Sadlier will lead the pack away. It's David or Sven Thompson sitting there in second position as they come over the start-finish line. James Pinkerton's there in third place. Fourth place is Andrew Ritchie, so that's the top 4 all over the start-finish line. And there is Andrew Ritchie in that 4th position. See what he might be able to do now to try and get right back up onto terms with James Pinkerton, because he had, before the safety car period, just fallen away a shade more. He closes, but can't quite squeeze his way through on the brakes up at the Dean hairpin. He was coming from a very long way back, so the top 4 having broken away. 5th place is number 71, that's Nigel Payne. He leads the Fangio Cup at this stage at the wheel of the light green car. You could just see him in the background of the shot as our race leader is already back on with it and starting to pull away again. So Jerome de Sadlier, who claimed victory last time out at Brands Hatch, he qualified for both races on pole position at Brands Hatch, but stalled when the lights went out in race number 1 and had to spend the rest of the period fighting his way back up through the order to finish ultimately in 6th place in the first race of the season. He won the second race of the season, say from pole, and set the fastest lap as well. And at the moment he's potentially on course to repeat that feat. He qualified on pole, that carries an extra championship point. He is leading the race, that would be a maximum of 40 championship points, and he has at this stage set the fastest lap. In second place though, David Thompson is coming under huge amounts of pressure from James Pinkerton as they turn their way through the Brook chicane. Now can David, or Sven as he's more likely to be known by most people, hang on to that position, because he's coming under great amount of pressure from James Pinkerton, who is looking one way, looking the other. You can see Sven just watching his mirrors, seeing exactly where he needs to position the car so as to try and prevent James Pinkerton working his way through. For James Pinkerton, already he's in 3rd place. That would be his best result of the season so far. For Sven, he is currently in second position. That is without question his best result of the season so far, because he finished just outside of the top 6 at Silverstone last time out. The wheel of the number 10 car, as they now thread their way once more out of Yentwood up towards Chapman Curve. The top 4 looking fairly equidistantly spread at this stage. Number 3, Jerome Desadlier leading from number 10, David Thompson, from this car here, which is James Pinkerton, who turns his way through the almost never-ending left-hander at Piff Paff. But at the moment, his aspirations to climb another step on the podium are sort of starting to evaporate a shade. He's falling further away from the number 10 machine. So onto the brakes, in towards Tarzan they'll go. And that's a problem by the look of things for Craig Thompson, whose car is slowing out on circuit. We saw him having a great battle, but it all seems to have come rather undone towards the tail end of this race. Here come the leading 4 in towards the Brook chicane. The order still remains the same. Still Jerome Desadlier from David Thompson, from that car there James Pinkerton, and then the white and red car of Andrew Ritchie. But looking at the gaps between them all, with just a lap or so to go, I don't think, barring any mistakes, we're going to see a great deal of shuffling in the order, because the respective positions seem to be set now as our race leader turns his way through the left-hander at turn 1, and then we'll head on to the brakes and bring the car down from almost maximum speed into what is a very slow corner, the left-hand Dean hairpin. It's not an overly tight hairpin, it's just a difficult one when you're approaching at such great speed to get right, but for the moment Jerome Desadlier has done superbly well. There's Peter Devlin, car number 5. He's having a busy little fight at this stage. That is David Frankland that sits just ahead of him. They are fighting over what is 8th and 9th position overall in this race. Peter Devlin looks to try and draw himself alongside, but by the look of things, outbraked himself heading in towards the Dean hairpin. So all of the hard work done to catch came undone rather there. Just a bit too late on the brakes, and David Frankland can at last take a breather. Here comes our race leader, Jerome Desadlier. You can see the tail end of the car still bouncing around on the curbs there, and he just had to correct it with a little bit of steering input, but it looks as though it is going to be a fairly dominant victory for Jerome Desadlier. When the lights went out, he might not have got off the line that particularly well, but since taking the lead of the race, he built the margin. The safety car came out, which eroded it, and he's been able to rebuild again on that one. Sven Thompson, though, in second place, is not as yet done and dusted with James Pinkerton, who is still getting ever closer, but as Jerome Desadlier comes out of turn 4 up towards the start-finish line, he takes the checkered flag and wins round 3 of the 2017 Radical SR1 Championship. From David Thompson in second position, James Pinkerton in third, and Andrew Ritchie will come through and finish in 4th position. So for Jerome Desadlier, that is win number 2 out of race number 3 in the season, and he will be very pleased indeed with that, particularly as his main championship rivals, Rob Ellis and Richard Baxter, aren't competing this weekend at Rockingham. Confirmation of the results said Jerome Desadlier claims the win, from David Thompson in second place, and third place goes the way of James Pinkerton. Andrew Ritchie was there in 4th, ahead of Nigel Payne, who won the Fangio class. David Tagg was in 6th place, with Chris Hall, David Frankland, Peter Devlin and Craig Thompson completing the top 10. Well, our drivers will head to the podium. 3 very happy drivers on the top step of the podium. Let's hear from the top 3.
It was a really good drive. I want to thank the 20 fans over there that are sitting. Thanks for watching, guys. And it was a great race. It was quite quick. The car felt good. And yeah, hopefully we'll do the same in race 2.
I know there was a certain section of the track where he was quicker than me, so I started to try and make it count elsewhere. Target was to keep it on and finish.
Yes, yeah, so Andrew Ritchie was impossible to pass, really good defensive driving. Eventually got past, which was good. Just tried catching David, but yeah, his driving was incredible, so I don't think I was going to get past him.
We can try and turn that round, can't we, for race 2?
Yeah, hopefully. I'll try my best. Yeah, that wall's very scary though, so try and stay out of the wall.